Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for joining us this Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, or middle of the night, as the case may be. We're having some internet issues here, so hopefully everything is going to come through okay. Please let me know in the chat if things are really, really bad or not working or something else such as that. This is the time every week that we set aside in order to answer questions and chit-chat amongst ourselves, the people that use the channel and kind of come along by. Hello, Karina. Good morning, good day. JC's Radiant Ray. Nice to see you here. Nice to see you as well, Karina. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned a moment ago, please let me know if things are not transmitting entirely smoothly. I'm not sure entirely what I can change about it because I'm using all the same kinds of settings that I always do. But occasionally I'm told that they can be working on the lines or working on the nodes in the area, and that can really dramatically impact how things work. So this is a weekly live event. I have taken to allowing myself the luxury of addressing questions more in depth. So, if it looks like we're coming to the end of our hour together, please post your question in the comments once the live event ends, so that I can answer it after the live event closes at another time. Hello, Honey ESI. Welcome to this week's live event. Yeah, that's it. The chat is open. Talk amongst yourselves. Ask your questions. We're here to chat. Hello, Sleepwalker. Welcome. I don't know if I've seen your user ID pop up before. Thank you for joining us. Transmission is good so far. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you very, very much. Fingers crossed it will continue. Honey ESI, I love your videos. Thank you. I need a personal coach. You're in Ghana. That's awesome. Awesome. Thank you for joining us from Ghana. You're the first person, as far as I am aware, who has identified themselves as being from Ghana. There are lots of resources to find voice teachers and coaches. That being said, I'm not entirely sure what you will have access to in Ghana, but it never hurts to try. I am a member of an organization called NATS, National Alliance of Teachers of Singing, and while it does say national, it is in fact an international organization. So, if you go on their website, which I believe is nats.org, you can do a really, really quick search and find, hopefully, singing instructors that are nearby you. Of course, you can always get in touch with me through jeffrolka.com or voicelessonssf.com, and we can discuss what it's like to do Skype lessons with me as well. But it's up to you. Those are two, I would say, reasonably good resources. nats.org, unfortunately, it's not like you basically, if you're a member, then they don't automatically post you to the directory. And quite frankly, searching the directory, like I've searched for myself on the directory and had a hard time finding myself, which would seem to be humorous, if you weren't trying to be found. But if you stick with it, I think you might find somebody, or you can always contact people on the directory that are nearby you, and they might be able to help you out. If there's a music store in your area, you may also go down there. The nice thing with NATS is there's a whole interview process and intake information sheet that you have to satisfy before they'll let you be a member. So you kind of have a little bit of quality control, basically, on with whom you're going to be speaking. Sleepwalker, yes, I've changed it. Also missed last 2 weeks. Well, welcome back. Karina, Jeff, what do you do every morning as your warm-up exercises? Real gentle. Honestly, it depends, and I don't always warm up. I mean, I mostly do. Keeping in mind that the videos I label on YouTube are technical exercises, I generally do little 1-5-1 scales. If I'm feeling really sluggish, then I really like the I really like that exercise. And if I'm really sluggish, I'll hum that. And just be very, very gentle with my voice. It is turned cold here in Northern California, so I will be wearing my fingerless gloves today. But then, Karina, a lot of it depends too on the requirements of the lessons that I'm teaching, or where I'm performing, or something like that. If for example, like if I know that my first lesson is a male vocalist who does not sing above the secondo passaggio, I may only warm up a small section of my range just to make sure that I'm feeling good and ready for the lesson. If I'm teaching a female vocalist or a male vocalist that ascends beyond the secondo passaggio, then I'll warm up more of my range in order to be prepared for the lesson. If I'm doing, or in the past, if I were doing a church service and I were doing the harmony part, then I would make sure to warm up my upper register because I knew I'd be singing up there. If I were leading the service, then I might only warm up to the secondo passaggio to satisfy the range requirements of the repertoire. It's all about what my warm-ups are largely about what I'm about to sing. If I'm working on my material, then typically it's a full range warm-up, though I probably won't descend beyond an E3, because I generally don't write my songs to descend beyond that point unless I have like a really compelling reason to do that. Jason's Radiant Ray, fall season has started. The weather is hot one day and cold the next. Any preventative tips on protecting our voices? Thank you for saying that, JC's Radiant Ray. Because I meant to mention that in the video that was released a few minutes ago here on YouTube, which was, it's really quite applicable to anybody who uses their voice a lot in their day-to-day lives or in their work, but also has a very active gigging schedule or even just practice rehearsal schedule where they're using their voices to sing their music. And I meant to say an ounce of prevention was worth a pound of cure, which I will be addressing in my newsletter. If you want to get in on that newsletter, head over to jeffrolka.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. But that is an incredibly wise way to look at this, and I did not emphasize that nearly enough in the video. That's one of the reasons why I'm going to address it in the newsletter. In some respects, I would throw this back to you and say, you know your physical person far better than I do. You know your body. You know the things that you are sensitive to. You know your the things that work well for you and the things that don't. So as the fall season arises, particularly, it doesn't really change that much here in Northern California. Maybe it shifts 10 degrees cooler or something. But I always dress in layers. You can see I've added, a puffy vest here, a down vest, because I get so cold. My core gets so cold. So I want to keep my core warm, not only from a standpoint of using it effectively while I'm singing, but also for my overall body comfort, so that I'm staying comfortable and warm and I'm not too hot nor too cold. I don't happen to be wearing a scarf today because I'm not really feeling that here, and I'm not wearing a hat, though those are things that I very quickly adorn as we head into the fall season, and I also try to be very quick to take them off if I start to get overheated. For me, it's all about layers, good rest, which for me includes being very attentive to how I use artificial lighting. There's a couple live events from like very early on, like probably in the single digits or maybe before 20, where I get very dark because I was only using candles to light my environment at the time. Now that the daylight has grown shorter, I use a lot of artificial lighting, or I use a head torch with red light so that my circadian rhythms can kind of ease into the day and ease into the night more effectively. And that, I believe, gives me a little bit better sleep, which is really, really crucial to our overall health in general, but certainly for our vocal health. And I think that's one of the more sinister ways that our voices can be compromised, in that when we don't get good rest, when everything else seems like it's working fine, not having a really good night's sleep can have a really dramatic impact on our ability to sing. Good day, Stryker. Welcome. Hello, Stryker at Stryker. Excellent, honey. I look forward to hearing from you. David Walsh. Good afternoon, Mr. Rolka. Good afternoon to you, too. Do you teach a different method for those who sing on the breath? Classical voice, or like, say, Andrea Bocelli, or more popular styles with mic use? The YouTube channel and my overall... Okay, so my method is based on Richard Miller's take of bel canto singing. So I am effectively teaching a similar technique to... I'm teaching the underpinnings of my technique are the same that any vocalist, any classical vocalist would use, any opera singer would use. The vast majority of my videos are focused on a neutral tone production, which is to say one where there are no affectations of any kind. That means that it's neither oriented towards the slightly greater aperture that an opera singer may work towards, nor is it nor does it take into account the variety of other apertures at the larynx that the various genres of popular forms would take. I am reminded again of this book that I should have bought or at least taken a note of, and it had this amazing anatomical chart of the different laryngeal positions and apertures as they relate to the various genres. The underpinnings of the technique, apagio breath management, vowel alignment, all of those things apply across the genres. How the compromises that you make as you get more specific in your discipline is where some of the variances start to come into play. And I've only really addressed that ever so slightly on my channel. There's only a few videos that really deal with that, and that is largely on purpose, in that I believe, and this is entirely up for debate, this is a subjective viewpoint. I believe that arriving at a neutral, well-balanced tone production that is consistent throughout the registration events of a given voice is the starting point from which we then specify, become more specific in how we use our voices. So, like for those that want to sing with distortion, you will endure less fatigue. You will have a greater sustainable usage of your voice if you can approach that from a standpoint of a well-adducted, well-aligned system that you can diverge from and mitigate how much you're willing to kind of compromise in that in order to have the affectation that you wish. For those that, very frequently I'll have vocalists where we want to work on having a little bit of a breathy sound to the voice. That too is much better. It's much better to do that from a well-balanced system, because then you can control how much breathiness that you're going to have and allow into your voice. This is important because the amount of breathiness is going to have a dramatic impact on your phrase length. And depending on where you are in your range, it can also compromise your intonation. Karina Chen, I see. What is on the breath. Good question, Karina. You mean supported voice? I must say, I've never heard that before. I went with the classical voice. Most classical techniques are derived. Most. There's always exceptions to it. There's an exception to just about every rule that I'm aware of. Maybe gravity. Not sure about gravity. Actually, there's probably tons of rules that there are no exceptions for. I'm just ignorant of them. But in any case, bel canto is the old Italian method of teaching classical singing that I don't want to say many because I am not aware of every single type of vocal method out there, but in my experience, most methodologies are derived, at least in part, from bel canto. Opera box, I see. Striker, for instance, is it similar to appoggio? Mandy, hello! Driving home, gonna tune in. All right, cool. Bishy J Official, how does one add more color in one's singing voice? You can that's a good question. It depends on what you mean by color, of course. My first thought is, of course, with resonance and how you direct your awareness in the oral cavity will have a dramatic influence on how you resonate. E, quite far forward. E, further back. E, further back still. E, quite far back. And then we can combine those things with different modes of phonation, or I should say different levels of adduction of the vocal fold. So let's say we took a kind of middle of the road mask resonance, but I only partially adduct the vocal fold. Breathier. And I can go breathier still. And then if I blend, let's say I blend that E with a little bit of an A vowel. I mean, we could go on and on and on with how, and that's just a single vowel. That doesn't even take into account consonants or variance in range. It goes on and on. And honestly, I want to reference David Walsh's earlier question, which I explained in part by talking about neutral tone production. This is why I feel like it's really important for us to come to have the ability to phonate in a neutral, well-balanced position. If for no other reason, it is that in learning how to do that, we will build the skill set to allow yourself to make those adjustments in resonance and adduction of the vocal fold to begin with. What is my favorite genre? Gosh, Karina, thanks for asking. Pop music, you suppose? Well, that depends somewhat on what you accept the definition of pop music to be. If you're using pop music in the standpoint of everything that isn't classical music, well, that would be that I suppose would be kind of not really. I don't really feel comfortable saying that that's correct. The fact is, I think about music. I've listened to so much music, and I love what music says to us, to me, in such a profound and deep way, that my love of the art form kind of, I don't want to sound all like weird and stuff, but It sort of transcends genre. I don't really care about the genre that much. I care about what the composition is saying. I care about, like, does it pick my interest in a melodic or a harmonic standpoint? If I'm listening to music that has a libretto or lyrics, then are the compositional attributes of it something that I find novel, or the message of it? Any of those things. So I listen to lots and lots of music. I sing and play lots and different kinds of music. If you were to randomly listen at my practice room door, you are, on any given day of the week, at any time, you are just as likely to hear me singing a Beatles tune as you are to hear me working on some, like, bizarre atonal art piece that pretty much no one really wants to listen to except for the people that are doing it. But honestly, some of that music I find to be some of the most beautiful and evocative music I've ever had the privilege, and I say privilege because it takes so much time to work on those pieces to do. So that seems like a kind of a wonky answer, and I don't mean to sound weird about it, but like case in point, I really have to make an effort actually to work on music because I take so much enjoyment from practicing scales. Like, I can practice scales for hours and hours and hours and hours, and the beauty of the profundity of the major scale and the implications of the way it's organized and how it relates to all the various keys is absolutely amazing to me. So there's my philosophy on genre. Robert, hey Jeff, I have a gig tonight. I mostly sing in tenor break area. Many popular musicians do exactly that. A lot of pop covers in about 2.5 hours of singing. How much warm-up is too much? By the way, I love your warm-up so much. Thank you. 2.5 hours is a long time. And the thing is, I'm going to make an assumption here. And maybe you can, I can see like you've actually written a little bit more here. Robert. No, different Rob. Okay. Well, feel free to chime in with some more because it seems like it's a kind of a chill day here in the old live event day. So that I put up like a technical difficulties thing. I wonder if I scared a bunch of people away. I'm okay. If you're with a band, then I assume that you're doing fairly sizable rehearsals on a regular basis. If you're not with a band, then that may not be occurring. But I would still assume that you're doing a fair amount of rehearsal time away from the gig. I'm also, I don't know why, but I'm getting the feeling like this isn't the first time you've done a 2.5 hour gig. I could be wrong about all of that because I don't really know. But if that's the case, then when I do a gig of that length, I think about the first 2 or 3 songs as kind of part of my warm-up. So give yourself like a reasonable warm-up that's going to touch on, even if only briefly, most of, if not all of the range that you'll be addressing throughout the evening. And then program like 2 or 3 songs that gradually get you into that zona de passaggio area, the area around the break or the secondo passaggio. And that gives you time to settle into your monitoring situation, to settle into the gig, just to settle in and to finish your warm-up basically on stage. And then you should be good to go. Make sure you're staying well hydrated, maintaining maintaining good phonation through a gig of that length can be really, really challenging. So make sure you stay in tune with how you're using your body and keeping the big musculature doing the work instead of squeezing. And thank you, by the way. I'm glad you like the warm-ups. At Mindy comments, hello, Meister. Am I rock and roll? Yes, got the rock and roll gloves. Night Slasher, hello, Mr. Jeff Rolka. Question, I don't know what you mean by what you said when I send you a question, send by email. Oh, just that you can send a question to me via email through jeffrolka.com or at voicelessonssf.com. Both of those websites, the emails from those contact sheets come directly to me. They don't go to some weird place. Yeah, if that's what you mean. Night Slasher, oh, I'm sorry, this is what I said. Baritones can emulate the timbre and dynamic qualities of a tenor, but their secondo passaggio will always be where it is. I see. Okay, yeah, I answered the question via email. My mistake. Okay, emulate means to approximate or to sound similar to. So you know, the most baritone secondo passaggios, D4, E flat 4, something like that. Most tenor range secondo passaggios, F4, F sharp 4. The secondo passaggio is not going to change place, but a tenor will sing the area up to the secondo passaggio instinctively differently than a baritone might. And if you listen to tenors singing in that area, and I think this is a very difficult thing to do, but because what you want to try to do is to emulate or sing similar to the kind of resonant qualities in their voice without necessarily trying to sound like the person you're listening to. So you might listen to a bunch of different tenor range vocalists and then emulate those tonal characteristics as you're approaching the secondo passaggio. Alternately, you could listen to like baritone vocalists who are singing in the tenor range. Like I need to find more examples of this because I always talk about Billy Joel. Billy Joel's a baritone. He regularly sings well into the tenor tessitura. So you can listen to him and then emulate those tonal characteristics. One of the big things that the baritones, if you're going to try to impersonate a tenor, is that when you get down here, the way that a baritone vocalist can phonate in that range is very, very different from the way a baritone will phonate that differently than a tenor would instinctively. Your power zone has much more of that in it, where the tenor range does not have the same kind of presence and power, and it bears listening very closely to if you're going to try to emulate those tonal characteristics. Quite frankly, if you're singing in the popular genres and you make a smooth transition over your secondo passaggio, everyone will think you're a tenor no matter what, most of the time, unless you really, really give it away. But the average listener will mistake a full range sound for, someone singing all over the place in their chest voices. Deborah, hey Jeff, I've been classically trained and I have lots of trouble singing pop. How do I fix this? Whoops. It depends a little bit on what's going on, and it depends on how long you're allowing for the transition. I mean, if you've been at it for years and years and years, then I'd want to know a little bit more about that. If you're trying to go back and forth between the two disciplines, where on a Monday you want to do classical, on a Tuesday you want to do, the Zombies or something like that, or the Cranberries. The Cranberries did Zombie, they're not, but the Zombies were a band too. And on Tuesday you want to sing the Cranberries tune. You might find that the changeover between the two takes a little bit longer than that. I regularly quote Wynton Marsalis when I'm faced with this question, and he generally gave himself 6 months to fully make the transition between classical and jazz. And and I don't think that I don't think that just going for it. I think that more, it's not just, there's more, there's a lot of components to that transition. There's the way that vowels are utilized and aligned, though in a basic sense, they're in a neutral capacity, they're going to be very the same. But the popular genres won't necessarily cultivate quite as much laryngeal opening as the pop genres would. This is done in order to stay in the vernacular, so they don't sound like an opera singer singing a classical tune. That can be rather tricky. And if in particular, if you've been doing classical music for a really, really long time and you're new to the transition, allowing that laryngeal aperture to change, and I'm talking about the height of the larynx here, could be very, very, it could take some time to cultivate that. Yeah, I suppose I'm feeling very challenged to be very specific, because I can imagine a variety of different ways of falling into pitfalls around it, and without knowing your voice, it's somewhat hard to give you a specific course of action. Like I said, my first impulse is that it may just take you longer to make the transition, and you may have to really devote yourself to that transition. So that would mean not really singing any classical pieces while you're transitioning between the two. You may also find that you may want to reference the singers, if you're singing your own music, then that's a different matter entirely. If you're singing cover songs, then listening very carefully to the tonal characteristics of the original artists, as well as any covers that have been done, and this has there's a lot of pitfalls in trying to emulate other artists. But I think we all benefit from some period of time of going through that. Emulating their style and tonal characteristics to a certain extent may help inform how you're going to make that transition. The key will be to notice how it feels on your body and on the larynx as you make that transition, and let that guide the compromise you're going to make between the classical openness and modes of phonation versus the popular forms. Additionally, if you've been trained to primarily remain in the cricothyroid dominant singing position with the voice, as many sopranos are, then you're going to have to learn to access the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice too, which can be rather challenging. Rob the Truth. Hey Jeff, how's it going? It's going pretty well this morning. Kind of looking forward to my next cup of coffee. It's going to come in about 26 minutes. Thank you for these videos. You really appreciate them. You're welcome. I have a hard time singing with consistency because I don't really know which way I need to be singing. But when I sing without really noticing my vocal cords or what they are doing, that's when I sing the best. Would you say that's the feeling I should pursue? To not really feel my voice in a way? No, when I say that's when I sing the best, that's when I think I sing the best. First of all, that is incredibly wise, and we could talk for hours about that. We really could. So record yourself. And you don't have to record yourself every day. You don't even have to record yourself every week. Record yourself singing some exercises. Record yourself singing a song or two. And put it away for 24 or 48 hours. Continue your practice. When you sing along, if you're using the videos on my YouTube channel, notice if there's a difference between how your vowels align in yourself versus the examples that I give. And if there is, then work towards, just add that as a question mark, basically. And maybe try to cultivate, a hands-off approach and see what happens. See if there really is a difference. So maybe do a recording one day where you're really focused on phonating, and then do a recording the next day where you're like reading a book or something while you're singing. And then compare and contrast the two and see if there really is an appreciable difference between how you're singing, and if so, is it better or worse, one direction or the other? That also draws into question of what is better or worse. I will be the first one to tell you what I'm teaching is neutral tone production so that we can have the fullest, most sustainable uses of our voices. That's the goal here. And from that neutral position, we can diverge into the various genres that we wish to pursue, and we get more specific in those genres. But if you're practicing Tuvan throat singing, this, what's here on the channel may not entirely help you to achieve Tuvan throat singing, which I have a friend who does that, and it's like the most unbelievable thing. But it is very, very wise to be aware of that potential cognitive distance between what I think I sound like versus what I do sound like. A more common one is that the way I'm using my voice right now feels like I'm singing this well. And that is often derived from associating habitual muscular usage with things being good or correct, right? Like, I've sung this 1,000 times this way, and it always feels this way, so I know it's good. But when you listen to it, it's all out of tune and the vowels aren't right. Well, you're assuming it's good because it feels familiar. That doesn't make it good. That's one of the chief hurdles when I'm working with a vocalist who has trouble singing over the secondo passaggio, over their break. It is often because they're making an association between their old habits and those old habits being correct or right. Even if they know they're incorrect, the familiarity of the feeling is still incredibly attractive and can be very challenging to circumvent. Great question. You're welcome, David. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. Mandy Cummins, hey, JC's Radiant Ray, Rob, night before last practice, the vocalist broke away from the band to practice. I believe we all had a much easier time blending our voice harmonies. Any idea why it was so much easier? I believe you mean vocalists broke away from the band to practice. I think that's correct. Well, when you say the band, I am assuming that this is drums and guitars and stuff, and those things are just loud. And if you remove yourself from that scenario, you often are then left with just the people that you are singing with. So you can hear yourselves better. If you're in the band and you have microphones and monitors, removing those variables from the equation it just simplifies things. It goes from there's a drummer on my left, the guitar player is on my right, and the bass player is immediately behind me. I've got my monitor in front of me, and the two other adjacent monitors I can still kind of hear. The three of us are standing in a line, and we all have microphones, and the lead vocalist is across the room, and I can't really hear them in the monitor. And then it's a completely different scenario from the lead vocalist and myself and the two other backing vocalists are standing in a circle, and one of them is playing a guitar, or they're giving a guide tone off of a piano or something like that, and we're singing without mics. It removes so many variables. It's almost impossible to make a comparison between the difficulties of a band environment and the advantages of singing without microphones in a small room. Yeah, I mean that's just, and I'm just getting started. Basically, I could go on and on and on about the complexities of singing effectively in a band environment. I mean, honestly, I only feel like I've done, I don't know how many gigs I've done. I couldn't even begin to count the number of gigs I've done. I used to have a website where I posted all my gigs, and I gave up on it because it was just ridiculous. I just couldn't. I couldn't be bothered to keep on like updating the website. Nowadays, of course, you could make that all automatic, but you know, there's like a handful of times when I really felt like, the monitors are right, or my in-ears, eventually it was in-ears, my in-ears are right, and the mic's level is right, and who knows what the audience is hearing. I've got no idea, especially if I'm wearing in-ears, and if there's a wedge in front of me, I still have no idea what's coming out in the front of house. Couldn't even begin to tell you. But at least what I've got at my little station on stage was good. And I remember like some of those gigs where it really stood out, and it's really fun. And it was easier to do that the less technologically advanced the gig was. So eventually, being through this band and this scenario and that scenario, and you know, it ended up with me playing an acoustic guitar on stage, just plugged into a DI box into the board and a mic. And I had been in bands where I played bass, sang lead. I had one foot pedal at my right foot that controlled my vocal effects processing, and my left foot had a Roland FC200 MIDI controller, which would control a Yamaha A3K sampler. And I would do the patch changes as well as execute samples from my left foot, sometimes changing, you know, my vocal processing on the right while singing lead, while playing bass. And I also had a keyboard that I would occasionally play too. And before that band finally ended, I also had a theremin that I would sometimes use as well. It was a total freak show, and it was super fun. But like, I don't know if I ever got good sound. Like, I don't know if I ever even heard myself in those, because we were so thunderously loud. We were rehearsing one time, and my bass cabinet was next to the PA, like a 15-inch PA speaker that was set on top of a riser. And this thunderous crash occurred in the middle of rehearsal, and we all looked around like, what happened? And my bass rig had rattled the 15-inch PA speaker off of its stand, and it crashed like into this table of junk and stuff like that. It was like this, you know, it's like a band rehearsal facility was filled with junk, and we were, you know, disgusting and stuff, but whatever. Anyways, I digress. Sorry about that. Gerald Ryan, hey man. I hope you're going to sleep now, but hello. Nature of the Voice, hello. It's okay, you're welcome nonetheless. Better late than never. Mandy Cummins, I'm finding the more... Oh, did I mention, by the way, in that band where I had the, you know, bass, lead, vocal processing, FC200, keyboard, theremin. I also once dressed up as a Borg. Yeah, talk about distracting. The eye patch was the worst. And the spirit gum, I actually glued my eye open underneath the patch. Mandy Cummins, I'm finding the more I work with my upper range and smooth out my passaggio, when I get to performing and my body's muscle memory takes over, I actually overshoot notes and sing them sharp. I'm now having to consciously relax on stage. Just thought I'd share. Cool. You may, I think that will probably settle down very, very quickly, Mandy. But you know, if you want to hedge your bets, a little solfege probably would not be out of the question. JC's Radiant Ray at Nature of the Voice. Any comments? It's actually fascinating for me to see the way my voice is changing and responding to training. It's great fun. Wonderful, wonderful. At Mandy. Karina, Chef, do you like singing with pure vowels or with vowel modifications? That the way that your question, I'm afraid I don't really accept that question. I mean, I understand, I accept your question, but that's not the way I think of it, nor is it the way I've been trained. And I don't agree with the notion that it's one or the other. The vowels, as you move into the zona de passaggio and over the secondo passaggio, will slightly open or modify in order to facilitate consistent airflow over the vocal fold. There are some schools of thought that insist that that is untrue. And the thing that I would say to that is that I'd like to listen to them sing. Because the thing is that if you're doing it correctly, the audience should not, your people listening should not hear the modifications. So if I'm singing into my zona de passaggio, and there you could clearly hear the modification in the second example, well then I've done it incorrectly. I've overshot I've overshot my balancing point. It's all about balance. If I don't allow that additional opening to occur, then the tonal characteristics change in what I feel is a deleterious fashion. Karina Chen, what are your thoughts about these two schools of thinking? I think I just said that. Gerald Ryan, my internet connection is weak. I was actually concerned about my internet connection today too, Gerald Ryan. I hope it is sorted out for you. Yeah, Mandy, sorry about the sticking. I know I'm getting all kinds of YouTube is saying that it's really, really bad, and I'm really, really sorry about that. JC Rainy Ray at Gerald Ryan. If it does not restart after a minute, stop and restart the live event. At Mandy Cummins, this may seem like a weird question, but can you think of exactly how you breathe? From where? How do you picture your breath? Karina, yeah, I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm really, really sorry. I think there's only a few people that are still online with us right now. I don't know. I think something